for joining us to celebrate innovative research in international education. Today's session will feature a presentation by Dr. Janelle Peifer, the recipient of the 2025 Teaching, Learning, and Scholarship Knowledge Community's Innovative Research in International Education Award. My name is Meredith Henderson, and I'm the current chair of the Teaching, Learning, and Scholarship TLS Knowledge Community. I'm joined today by my fellow TLS KC member leaders, Dr. Kate Hellman, Programs and Resources Coordinator, Dr. Eleanor Hag, Research and Scholarship Connections Network Leader, and Dr. Delnoza Kasilova, Chair-elect. Many thanks also to Dr. Shana Saubert, the Associate Director of Research and Scholarship at NAFSA, for providing administrative support for this session and for being a TLS KC staff partner. I now invite my colleague, Dr. Hellman, to speak a bit about the TLS KC Award.
Thank you so much, Meredith. Hello, everyone. Each year, the Teaching, Learning, and Scholarship Knowledge Community celebrates and recognizes new and innovative research from any discipline that demonstrates a potential or proven impact in the field of international education. One author's publication in the form of either a book chapter or journal article is selected for recognition from a competitive slate of submissions for the TLS KC Innovative Research in International Education Award. Submission for the 2026 award is open now, and we are pleased to be able to provide insights and answer any questions that you might have about the award or about the award process. In fact, the TLS KC Award is one of 6 NAFSA Knowledge Community Awards that will be accepting submissions until February 10th, 2026. With a few exceptions, nearly everyone is welcome to apply or be nominated for this award. If you've recently published either a journal article or a chapter in an edited volume that is based on research, or are familiar with someone else's work that deserves recognition, please submit for the TLS Research Award. Full criteria for the award process are available on the website, but basically the research should be applicable to the field of international education, impactful, innovative, and inform applied practice or contribute to international education scholarship that is considered useful to practitioners. Again, submissions for the award and all of the other open NAFSA awards will be open through February 10th, 2026. If you have any questions at all, there will be a dedicated Q&A period towards the end of today's event where you can ask them, or you can certainly send us an email at tlskc@nafsa.org. I welcome everyone to post in the chat, tell us who you are, where you hail from, and what brought you to this session, as we welcome others to talk and prepare for an interactive activity after this next piece. So off to you, Meredith.
Thank you, Kate. This event is designed to highlight innovative research relevant to the field of international education. And today we're excited to welcome Dr. Janelle Peifer, who is a licensed psychologist and associate professor of psychology at the University of Richmond. She is a speaker and consultant for higher education institutions and organizations dedicated to creating opportunities for all individuals to grow, flourish, and succeed. She founded Peifer Psychology and also leads Flourish Psychotherapy. Dr. Peifer earned her PhD in clinical and school psychology at the University of Virginia and is an alumna of Wake Forest University in North Carolina. Her research focuses on college student development, identity and culture, mental health, and complex trauma. Peifer received the 2025 TLS KC's Innovative Research in International Education Award for her co-authored journal article, Developmental Pathways to Intercultural Competence in College Students. You can read more about her many accolades and accomplishments in her profile on the NAFSA website. And any questions can be put in the chat, as we will also have time for Q&A after her presentation. We're pleased to have you here, Dr. Peifer.
I really want to expressly thank Dr. Peifer for sharing her research with us today. I'd also like to start a dialogue about her research more generally. So we have a few questions for you, Dr. Peifer, that Ellie and I are going to share. I'll start by asking the first one. Can you give us an overview of your research questions and the key findings from your research?
Oh, okay. I'm I'd be pleased to. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, for everybody from the TLS KC, and especially for the work that Shauna Saubert has done from the very beginning in support. So thank you for giving us an opportunity to engage. I hope that this will be very actionable and participatory. So please keep those questions coming in the chat. So, in terms of the overview of the study that's featured today, we work together to really explore at the highest level this question related to what is the impact of higher education on student outcomes? So, this is a question that throughout the global pathway study, which is used for this paper, that we're interested in. Basically, how do different higher ed experiences shape the way that students grow and change? And specifically for this study, we focused in on the outcome of intercultural competence and variables related to that, and looking at how travel and non-travel based institutional experiences might relate to those intercultural outcomes. And in particular, we wanted to know this, since we have longitudinal data from the Global Pathway Study, we wanted to be able to track that developmental process of change and growth. Because I know for me, the reason I'm in higher ed is for that transformational power. Like the reason I'm interested in global learning is this idea of transformation and change. And we had the opportunity to look at that longitudinally. And not only in terms of intercultural competence in the way that we typically think about the knowledge, skills, and abilities that we develop to be able to engage effectively with people who are culturally different than ourselves, but also those behavioral choices that students were reporting about the change in their social diversity. So their friends, seeing their peer groups become more diverse. So looking at this behavioral piece as well. We wanted to know what your intercultural competence was, but we also wanted to see what did that look like in the decisions you made about who you hang out with, who you surround yourself with, because we know that young adult period, those peer relationships are one of the major drivers of your long-term outcomes, beliefs, attitudes. And so that's really what the focus of the research was, to, at the highest level, try to understand the impact of both these travel and non-travel based experiences on college students' intercultural competence and outcomes.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for that overview. I'd like to move on to a question about implications for practice that came out of the study. So as a practitioner in international education myself, and I'm sure this is true for many others on the call too, my attention goes immediately to, so what does this mean for us? What can we do with this? So can you maybe tell us what the key implications for practice were that came out of this study?
Great question. And I try to hold that at the heart of whatever research that I'm doing is what can people do with this, right? How can this be useful for folks who are enacting this on their campuses? So I think there are a few takeaways. I'll focus on just two or three of them. One of the major findings came to thinking about the impact of campus-based experiences. These non-travel-based experiences were really powerful drivers of the intercultural competence variable as well as the social diversity. So when I think about that and translating that to what does that mean for somebody who's working in international ed on a campus, that really underscores and provides support for the campus internationalization and globalization that folks across the US are doing to really see the campus environment as an ongoing, potentially global laboratory for people to engage and learn from each other in the classroom, in the research that they're doing, in living and learning communities, in friendships as well that they might be formulating. So really not discounting the significance and relevance of those campus-based experiences. And I think as an extension of that, for folks who are in making decisions about resource allocation to ensure that there's funding and support for those efforts in the same way to be executed effectively and multidisciplinarily, like bringing together faculty and staff collaborators to do this effectively and supporting and resourcing that. So I think that's one major takeaway. And the other is really, it makes sense now in retrospect that we see that friendships and peer relationships during adolescence and young adulthood are major drivers of all of most of the outcomes that we look at when we look at emerging adulthood and adolescence. Those peer relationships sort of peak in significance during this time period where before and after your family is the most important thing. There's a period of time from around 14 to 25 where it's actually your friendships that are the most important predictor of like your outcomes and at that stage. It's really developmentally critical. And so I think that it really also makes sense for campuses to think about and not discount, how do we scaffold relationship building? Like, how do we, whether it's through mobility-based programs or whether it's campus-based programs, how do we actually underscore and support relationships and specifically same age peer-based relationships? Because we know that a lot of the research on like home stays or home-based experiences might categorically differ in terms of the outcomes that students have through study abroad. But even taking a step forward, what can we do to get different young people from different cultural backgrounds to have the support and space necessary to develop friendships and long-term relationships? And I think that that is extremely important to continue to attend to. Yeah, and I did see that question about what instrument was used to assess global competence for this study. So we used the Global Perspectives Inventory, so Brasscamp's GPI for this study. And one of the things that I love about that measure is that it has many interperson variables between people, and then also your own identity. So intra variables, where they look at your own sense of your cultural identity and being. And so there's a really strong mix in the GPI of different sort of intercultural correlates and variables that we're able to parse apart and look into.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peifer. And I think we can all appreciate what you noted about relationship building in particular. Since a number of us, scholars, practitioners, and scholar practitioners, work in that realm, really trying to think about and speak to, the student experience and the role that relationships play in this kind of work. And really coming off of that, can you elaborate a little bit more on what can international education professionals learn from the outcomes of your study? I know you already touched a little bit on resource allocation and multidisciplinary, but what would you add to that, right, for the folks that are watching this?
Yeah, I hope that and I'm sure there are blind spots that I have that might not show up here, but from my perspective, what this really did was uplift the importance of the international ed global learning professionals to the entirety of strategic priorities that most institutions hold. So it really moves beyond thinking of IE as siloed primarily to facilitating study abroad, while an important vehicle of change on campus, to seeing a much more profound and broad-reaching role. And I think that many campuses get that, but not all do. And I think that this really underscores, if we're thinking about really supporting and developing and graduating students who are prepared to have the affective, the behavioral, the knowledge and skills to interact effectively in a globalized world and society, whether that is a central outcome of just higher ed in general. And so I think that it really is able to underscore and support the necessity of seeing IE as central to the curricular and co-curricular and strategic priorities of an institution. And I think that that's a big part of, and that not only just in this paper, but in the other research that we've done in the Global Pathway Study, we continue to see that sort of essential role of valuing the powerful tools that IE has at its disposal to be a part of high impact practices for students to leave college and feel like it was worth it and really feel like the investment of resources that they made led to transformation across those key levers for students.
Thank you. I feel like you're speaking to the soul of international education today. I know we've got one more question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that what you said really resonates with me about trying to get out of our silos and how, international education and international educators need to be more integrated with other professionals and faculty on campus. So, the outcomes of your study show they could be relevant to staff across the university, whether it's in residence life or living learning communities, as well as, study abroad professionals or others. And it just shows how we all need to be working together and not in our own separate bubbles. So I find that really inspiring. So having completed this study, are there some future avenues for research that have come out of it as ideas for what you're going to do next?
That's a wonderful question as well. And just kind of speaking on your last point, I want to underscore how much I do believe in the importance of that interdisciplinary staff faculty collaboration. And I think that part of the reason it's so clear in our work is because my collaborators on this research, Dr. Elaine Meyer-Lee and Dr. Geeta Tasuk-Shirazi, are both, Dr. Meyer-Lee has been a chief international officer, administration, and leadership. So it really shows up in our work because our collaboration is an illustration of what I think that our findings support, right? So I just wanted to underscore and give a shout out to them because without them, this work would not have been possible. But in thinking about next steps for this research, there are many that I hope that I'll be able to do with the team of collaborators I have, and also anybody who's interested in this work, I'm happy to share data so that you can take corners of it that you want to pursue. Please feel free to reach out. This is open source data. I really am interested in having a better understanding of what types of on-campus experiences are related to those long-term outcomes with a little bit more nuance, maybe bringing in qualitative data, being able to have narrative elements, especially in an ongoing way, because we were able to see quantitatively this growth process over time since we were looking at the change, like the overall change, for example, in the diversity of your friends group. I'd like to understand from the students themselves the why, the what, more of the texture. How did they attribute that growth and change, and what did that look like? So I think that there's opportunities for some really cool qualitative mixed method work that could inform practice even more. I also think that it's a natural next step is to better understand also when there are travel-based experiences, what features of travel-based experiences can enhance those intercultural outcomes, and also how do they connect together rather than seeing it as either or, but what is the natural sort of continuation and dovetailing of these travel-based experiences that might spark interest and then be continued and deepened over the length of time that you have remaining on campus and through your summer experiences and the things that you do in the community outside of the classroom. So really taking a much more wraparound approach to being able to explore and I think continue to sort of zero in on what are we doing in higher ed? Why are we here? And how can we best support students and best allocate our resources conscientiously to be outcome oriented, but outcome oriented with nuance, right? Outcome oriented that's not, that has the breadth to it as well.
No, I really appreciate your reflective point there about asking ourselves why in this space and being very nuanced about being outcome oriented as well. I know this has generated a lot of thought for me personally, and I'm very eager to continue this conversation. We are going to go ahead and pivot and further discuss this in breakout rooms. So we'll look forward to continuing the conversation there for a time where we can go a little bit deeper.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Dilnoza Hasilova, and I'm current chair-elect of the TLS KC. I hope you enjoyed the breakout rooms. We had a really great conversation in my room. And please take a moment to answer this Zoom poll that we have. We want to know your ideas. 1 minute. Go ahead and pick your, please, answers if you would like to be. It's kind of more a feedback that we want to hear from you all. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Peifer for sharing her research insights with us all today. This is a really needed research in this field. And before we close out the event, we want to provide some time for everyone attending to ask some questions about the innovative research in International Education Award, which we mentioned in the chat before. Submissions will be accepted through February 10th. So if you have any questions, please ask them now and send them directly to us at tlskc@nafsa.org. And I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that email as well. Excellent, that's exciting. Thank you so much for participating in our poll. So it looks like we have great responses. Let's share the results with everyone. I hope you're seeing it. Are you able to see it? Excellent. So, okay. Well, as a final question, Dr. Peifer, I would like to ask you, what advice would you give to someone starting out in the field and or wanting to share their work with others, but not knowing how or where to start?
Well, the first thing that popped into my mind when you said that question is a quick story. I'll keep it brief. When I started my position at Agnes Scott College, which was my first faculty position, I read about this new person who was starting the exact same day, who had done a lot of work in intercultural competence, and she was taking on this sort of high-level VPAA role, and I felt completely, out of my depth. But I reached out and emailed her, and it transformed the future of my research and collaboration. And now Dr. Elaine Meyerly and I have done tons of work together since then. And so I think that never neglecting the beauty and power of collaboration and community, and intentionally seeking out and cultivating and investing in those relationships in an ongoing way, because I think that they're transformative, and that there's nothing that we can do in this field without amazing people around us. So that would be my first step, is look at the people on your campus, really get curious about them and connect with them, and then go from there.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else, Kate? Eleanor, since we have time, feel free to provide your advice if you have one.
I don't know if we just wanted to step back a little bit, Dilnoza, and provide time for the audience to ask questions to Dr. Peifer as well.
We also received your questions on your forms. Thank you so much for submitting them as well. And Dr. Peifer may answer those questions too.
And I can pull those up. So would it be helpful if I take a second and respond to a couple of questions before we wrap up? Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah. And then we can look for chat as well.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. I'm scrolling through. Some of those original questions, I think, I found them. Here we go. Awesome. So a question that came up that was sent out before was, looking at how much my work bridges research and practice in intercultural competence. From an institutional perspective, how can universities move from more individual level interventions like workshops or study abroad to embedding intercultural competence as core elements of institutional culture and policy? Ooh, what a good question. So I don't know who sent that question in, but thank you. And I think that some of the ways that universities can move from individual interventions to more embedded is really being able to envision and map onto the entire general education curriculum the role and different manifestations of like what that looks like in action, of the role that global learning, intercultural competence can play in these different high-level student learning objectives and outcomes. I think that it can also be a part of the strategic planning processes and like visioning that shows up. But I think that the more that institutions are able to pair both sort of the philosophical outcomes that they're looking for and then concrete pathways to meet those, like where that shows up, where the resources are on campus, mapping it, and then having an intentional strategy to measure when there are new interventions or new programs or new curricular approaches. What are you hoping to see? What is the timeline and what is the process by which to continue to track that progress as an institution, and using assessment to leverage that? So I think that that's one way that universities can move from more individual level interventions to start thinking about this at a systemic level. Like the institution itself, like I said before, is kind of a global laboratory. And I think that that really points to the importance of having a diverse faculty staff, looking at the student body as well. I think that there are also opportunities to really look at community-based engagement and integration as well. So institutions also looking at who how to be able to leverage both the on and off campus environments to be able to formulate that space of like a global laboratory for learning. So those are some things that come to mind for me. Let's see. So, okay, a question that also came up was information about intentional facilitation of intercultural competence that any of the students experienced in the study. And so that first question is like, so for the study that we're looking at, what were the on-campus experiences and how might that have been facilitated? And so looking at that, for the non-travel based experiences, we included things like foreign language learning, which consistently across my research comes out in being a huge predictor of intercultural competence. It's not just a correlate. It's not just that people who have more intercultural competence are seeking out foreign language classes at a higher level. It's actually a predictive variable that people having those foreign language experiences is really tied to intercultural competence. And when I've really dug in to think about why that is I do think that intentional facilitation shows up. When you're learning a language, you're also learning about culture. I also think that it requires an investment in vulnerability, like that there's something affective that happens as well as you're learning a language and practicing it in an ongoing way. And so that I think that that's one of those spaces where there's curricular opportunities that are richly available for co-curricular collaboration. So if you have this classroom-based experience of learning about a language and a culture, how can that be extended to really continue to facilitate now practicing this with folks who are your own age to learn how you would communicate and make connections with people from this country? Because the way that you're going to talk as a college student isn't going to be the textbook learning that you're doing. How do you actually find people who are, and how much is that empathy building for students to see what it's like to be vulnerable in a new cultural space, practicing a language and knowing that you're imperfect in it. And I don't know about your students, but for my students at University of Richmond, they're perfectionistic and highly anxious. And so even the empathetic experience of looking at those like sort of integrated, like I'm learning a language, I'm practicing it, I'm putting it myself out there with young people my own age is already going to build some of those empathetic pathways, those empathic experiences that are hard to learn theoretically without living it in an embodied way. Um, I also saw that some of the living learning communities and doing globally and internationally focused research, I think these spaces where you have these kind of like ongoing experiences of having to engage with and really explore these topics more immersively and having some faculty or staff support and facilitation are really powerful opportunities. And then the last question, but I think before we pivot, if I'm thinking about this right, the trying to see any other questions that I'm missing here or any questions that folks have who are here live that I can respond to?
We do have one in the chat, Dr. Peifer, and I think this is a really interesting question.
Ooh,
Go a lot of directions, but we have a
yeah.
question here. What are your thoughts on technology and AI? And
Ooh.
how do these impact or how will they impact intercultural competencies? What a great question.
Lee, thank you. That's a really timely and wonderful question. I will admit I am still formulating my relationship with AI, and I think that a lot of that and doing a lot of reading and exploration. And I think that one of the most powerful sort of analyses of the relationship between artificial intelligence and our humanity is the sense that it might actually, if done well, if engaged with consciously, will help us be more aware of what is uniquely human, right? That as opposed to replacing or pulling us away from our humanity, in some spaces, if AI can be leveraged, it may help us spend more time, have more tools, and the ability to differentiate what is uniquely human. And I can give an example of this with my own children. There is the ability, they can very easily differentiate AI developed art, AI developed photography from humans almost at this innate level. And I think that that skill set is continuing to get honed. And when you ask people if they would prefer, still in the research, to get advice from an AI bot or a human, they're able to say that they would prefer to talk with a human in most situations. And I think that increasingly we're going to develop the skill set to be able to say, what is it that we're looking for that's uniquely human? And I think that in intercultural competence in education, that is helping to be able to say, what tools can help me get closer to the aspects that are uniquely human? Can I use this for language learning? Can I use this to do research on to be able to have more knowledge going into a space and prepare? Can I use this to be able to identify a specific plan for myself if I'm engaging with culturally different others and research organizations that I could participate with, not to replace, but to facilitate those connections? And I think that the more that we assist students in being able to see it as something that is in service of their humanity and the skills that they're hoping to develop, as opposed to replacing some of those skills or social interactions, their own critical thinking, the more that we say that this could actually open up more time and energy for you to focus on what is uniquely human, the things that you might have been asked to do that you shouldn't have had to do, that a machine can replace, right? That there are certain things that you can willingly and agentically sort of delegate. And then there's certain things that you should never, right? And that the more that you understand that you might never, right? So I think that it can be a real helpful tool in creating more access and more equitable access to be able to engage with, to explore, to get experiences in that intercultural realm that might have been harder to research, to know about, to prepare for, to do outreach and could be a barrier breaker if used responsibly and with the scaffolding to do that well.
I love that barrier breaker. I think we've got some quotable things from you today, Dr. Peifer. We do have one more really, I think, excellent question that came up in the chat here, really relating to the intercultural competency of faculty and staff. I know that's something we talk about quite a lot in international education. And in fact, it came up in one of the breakout rooms about the importance of interculturally competent faculty and staff systems, programs, processes, to, as Yangling said, nurture and transform our students. Is that something you comment on a little bit as well?
Oh, I mean, I think that this is wonderful because I do think that so much of the strategic work on institutions often focuses on student outcomes while sort of maybe not spending the same amount of energy and attention considering the faculty and staff who will be delivering these, right? It's similar to what we see in a lot of child-based interventions in clinical psychology. You can focus on children's mental health, but if they're embedded within systems with teachers and parents and families who aren't shored up with skills, then you can give them mindfulness interventions all day long, but you need to also attend to the family and the system. And so I think similarly, right alongside any sort of student goal or strategic priority, you have to think about the long-standing faculty and staff who will be delivering so that professional development, mentoring, built-in systems to also value this work. So embedding it into our reviews, our evaluations for promotion, the more that the institution can concretize and build into the system, the support to develop that, the documentation to uplift the stories of when this is occurring so it can be valued. It's not marginal work that's invisible. And then systems that like award it, that are able to show this is, when we say that this is what we value for our students, we recognize that the students can't have that without us investing in our own intercultural competence and developing our team, and then really supporting and retaining and celebrating the faculty and staff who are exemplifying that. So if it is a strategic priority, seeing it across stakeholders, I think is a really powerful way to think about that strategic prioritization.
Thank you. Those are really insightful comments. I'm not sure we have time for any more questions, but we certainly have opportunity to continue the conversation on our networks. So back off to you, Dilnoza.
Yeah, we do have a couple of more minutes, last more, questions. Please go ahead and ask your questions if you have any. And don't forget to submit an application. You can nominate yourself or submit a nomination for the 2026 Innovative Research and International Education Award by February 10th, 2026.
Can I just add a couple of words here before we close?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add a couple of points about ways to get involved through NAFSA in sharing your research for our participants. So one opportunity that I really want to highlight today has a deadline coming up next week, and that's the opportunity to submit a poster proposal for next year's annual conference, which is in May 2026 in Orlando. I will put the link here in the chat. So, I have a special interest in kind of helping practitioners figure out ways to share their research and get more involved in research and kind of bridging that gap between research and practice. So the poster proposal, which you can find under this link, deadline November 21st for next May, is a really kind of low, kind of not too labor intensive and not too time intensive way to start sharing your research. And by research, it doesn't have to be something like super deep and involved. It can be just a project, learnings from something you've been working on in your professional role. I actually presented my EDD dissertation research as a poster at NAFSA a couple of years ago. It was a great experience, not just as a way to speak to others about my research, but to walk around and see all the other posters and see, what other people had been working on. So that's fantastic. Couple of other NAFSA publications, which I just want to put the links in the chat here. So these are NAFSA publications that anyone can contribute to. Please, explore the links and read a bit more about both of those publications. as well as submitting your own work, a good first step for getting involved in research and scholarship in this field is volunteering as a reviewer. So you can volunteer as a reviewer both for our conference sessions or posters to review those, and also as a reviewer for the second publication that I've listed here, which is the Global Studies Literature Review. So check out those links if you're interested in submitting a piece that you've written or volunteering as a reviewer. We would love to have you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ellie. Yes, anyone, any last minute, we have time for any additions, or if we forgot anything, or any news, or any updates, or yeah. No? Well,
Sorry,
thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I have just one last thing. Just a plug also for the Research and Scholarship Connections Network, which is actually the focus of my role with the TLS KC. So I believe the link was put in the chat a way back, but there it is. Okay, so if you're not familiar with this can be found at network.nafsa. So on network.nafsa, there are a bunch of communities that you can join. You can just see them all listed there. The different KCs have different communities. Find the one that's called Research and Scholarship Connections. You just click on join if you haven't done so already. And it's just a forum for us to share comments or ideas or questions about research and scholarship in the area of international education. And as I mentioned, the particular passion of mine is connecting research and practice in both directions, the impact that research has on practice and the impact that practice has on research. So please, yeah, feel free to post. They're moderated posts, so they will come to a NAFSA staff member for moderation, but anyone is free to post on the network.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, with that, we're going to close our event for today. Thank you so much for joining. Please feel free to reach out to everyone here who you saw their names, to our chairs, to network leaders, coordinators. And thank you so much for all of you for doing this important work in international education field.